everyone, this is Peak Entertainment and we're back again, and here now we have another video for you, and this will be my spoiler review of the Thunderbolts. Now this won't be a chronological breakdown of the film, but more of an outline of the elements that I feel both worked and didn't work quite as well. And you can check out my non-spoiler review of the movie, and I will leave a link within the description. So we'll get straight into it then, and the first element that I want to talk about is the overall characters and which one were far more successful. And I said in my non-spoiler review that indeed the best part of this film was the character dynamic, the banter, the back and forth, very reminiscent of the MCU in its glory days. And in this movie, I feel the best parts were when the Thunderbolts were scraping through, running, hiding, and trying to survive. And this involved that opening escape sequence where they all go to that deep bunker with all the confidential data that Valentina wants to eliminate to stop her getting impeached. And this is where we see Yelena, Walker, Ghost, and also Taskmaster alongside Bob meeting up. And initially I felt Walker came across as a bit unlikable. He was kind of too trigger happy, but luckily he was toned down much more later on and a much more appealing personality came through. I did like the moments where they had to link up together to climb up that very long tunnel, and that scene got very good reaction from the cinema. And again, it was a reminder of what made the MCU so special, having the characters again conversing with one another as they were trying to get themselves out of tight situations. We did get flashbacks which did add some depth, most notably with Yelena, where we saw the origins of her widow training, and this included some far more darker moments where I believe we also saw a young Natasha as well, correct me if I'm wrong, but overall these scenes were executed very well. We saw scenes as well of Walker's troubled past with his family. If you remember, he was initially a celebrated celebrity, the kind of replacement Captain America, before he became far more corrupted, if you like, with the super soldier serum. Again, this was going back to the Falcon and Winter Soldier series. And these type of flashbacks were connected whenever a character came into touch with Bob, who was able to tap into their past memories. We even saw Valentina's past, where I believe it was a scene where she was very young and she saw two men, and I believe one of those was her father, and she saw him shot right in front of her eyes. And this is another effort here to deepen into her character to provide some justifications as to why she was doing what she was doing. Now, one question I did have constantly as to the Thunderbolts themselves was whether all of their members were actually necessary. The film constantly strived for this sense of unity and togetherness, but when we see the Sentry threat and how it's dealt with, I don't really think all of the Thunderbolts were actually needed. We talk about Bucky, for example, who spends the first half of the movie much more involved in his congressional duties, where he wasn't really being much of a congressman, to be honest. You wonder how exactly did he get to this position? But when he entered in a very good sequence, we had that scene which was shown in the trailers where he's chasing down the Thunderbolts and he shoots the lead, which causes the limousine to flip over. That was very cool. But for me, he just didn't seem that important when it came to the overall final conflict. He was there more to tell the Thunderbolts what they had to do. But when we came to the final stages, he just seemed like another standard member, no more important or more capable than either Red Guardian or US agent. And he felt like he was there just more because he was the most long-standing MCU character with the most familiarity. He's been in this universe ever since the first Avenger film from 2011. So I understand why he was included, but he really didn't feel that essential to the overall piece. We then quickly mentioned Taskmaster, who meets with the group in the beginning, opening sequence as I mentioned before, but is then quickly killed off by Ghost. And he did wonder what exactly was the point of having her involved in this film. She was featured amongst all of the promotional material, but many people suspected that Taskmaster wasn't going to be in the film that long. Already she had a disappointing involvement within a Black Widow film, where it was revealed at the end that she had indeed been a gender-bent version of the character who was meant to be the main antagonist for Natasha. But to kill her off instantly here, I guess they were trying to go for some sort of shock factor, but it didn't really work. Obviously, this was probably a result of reshoots, it seems, but I also feel it's a real insult to the actor Olga Kurylenko, who is more than a competent action actress. easily worthy of a far more substantial role, and to just have her in here for literally the first 2-3 minutes, where she literally only appears where we see the nanotech mask come off for literally about 5 seconds, I just feel again was a real insult and underutilization of the overall actress. So we'll then talk about the most pivotal character certainly of the story, and that is Sentry, or Bob, the superpowered being that really isn't that well renowned within comic book fandom in the mainstream space. He is referred to more as the Marvel version of Superman, and over the course we see Bob manifest into this form about halfway through the film, as Valentina has somehow convinced him to turn briefly against the Thunderbolts. And I wasn't really convinced by that turn. He quickly goes from being somebody who's confused and completely unaware of his abilities to all of a sudden this super-powered god who wants to take over everything. And yes, we did have that scene before when he's in the facility talking to Victoria about his past, but I don't think that was enough justification to make this sudden switch. And just honestly, I think Sentry was completely the wrong choice in terms of being the main antagonist, of which he really wasn't, to be honest. Firstly, we look at his costume, which wasn't that cool. It had that real cheap feel to it, and that was disappointing because normally Marvel is very good in translating these characters into live action, but his overall design didn't work here. It was too faded in contrast. If you look at the comic book version, Sentry has this much more brighter, shinier colour in terms of his overall costume, but it just didn't work here. It just looks very faded, just like the overall aesthetic of the entire film itself. Just didn't work for me, and neither did the set piece where we saw the Thunderbolts attacking Sentry in the Avengers Tower. We had this very much rotating one take fight sequence where everybody is leaping and punching and kicking at him, and it has absolutely no effect whatsoever. Yet the tension isn't there because we can see clearly that Sentry could have killed all of the Thunderbolts in one hit. And this is the problem when you have this superpowered being going up against these lesser powered heroes. There's no chance that they have in terms of taking them out. So that, again, there's no real suspense or excitement. Though I did like the fact that the heroes quickly realised that they were overpowered and looked to retreat rather than continue fighting. That added some sort of credibility in terms of their overall intelligence. But again, going back to Sentry, I think he was nerfed even further. We see later on he starts to reject Victoria's orders and wants to clearly go out on his own, but then she's able to just disarm him in some sort of kill switch, which completely again undercuts the overall godlike power of the character if he could be disarmed so quickly. So again, I just feel a far more grounded, less powered antagonist would have suited this overall story in contrast to the overall heroes. So if we stay on the character of Sentry and we talk more then about the whole void element to his character, this was revealed very much in all of the trailers, and the void really was this more darker manifestation of Sentry, and we see this happen shortly after he is deactivated in many ways by the kill switch. A sort of the inner angst of Bob coming out, and we see him hovering over the city landscapes, and then he starts voiding people out of his existence in a very striking effect where we see these black shadows, and there was that one very shocking moment where we see the young girl being voided before everybody else being consumed. Now, why exactly Sentry or the Void wants to consume the city and everybody inside it really didn't make sense to me, and the whole concept of the Void really didn't work. We see Yelena for some reason stepping into the Void without knowing how it works or how exactly it would happen. She just steps into it for no reason. She manages to locate Bob within this alternate world, this void construct. But where were the other presumably thousands of people that also hid into the void? How did Yelena manage to find him where so many people were also inside this other universe? So that was just built in for convenience, as where we had the other Thunderbolts also being able to find Yelena and Bob so quickly. Again, with better writing, you could have had this scenario where they were much more in a confined space rather than consuming the whole city. Then that would have worked then if Sentry, let's say, had voided just Yelena and then the others rushed in to save her, and then you could have had this much more confined confrontation, which is really what was happening within this whole entire sequence. That would have been something far more plausible and far more convincing. And then we get to the moment when the void starts collapsing as Bob starts to lose control over his overall emotions, and we have the characters crashing through these different rooms and sequences, and then they come across a duck or somebody dressed in a duck costume. Again, that was generated for humour, but it just didn't work. And this is when the movie was starting to lose itself, as it was becoming far too messy and chaotic. Again, it was just put in there for visual thrills, but it just didn't carry any weight, as a lot of what was going on here didn't really make much sense. Again, this was further highlighting of the many issues within Phase 4 and beyond, when they were trying to go for these much more multiversal dimensional concepts without having much consistency. Then talk quickly about Yelena, and the suggestion that at times for many people that this felt like it was her overall story, subtle sequel to Black Widow in many ways. And yes, she is the most prominent character. She's the one that kind of leads the team in many ways, or gives them the most advice. She has the most connection to Bob, which plays out in the overall climax. And in terms of the flashbacks, she has the most substantial, as I mentioned before. And the ones that really hit home, especially, was the ones where we see her in a younger age, presumably in her widow training. We had that very shocking moment where it seems like she's leading a younger girl into some sort of trap, and then we see a adult man come through and shoot her. That got a lot of gasps within the cinema. We had another sequence where we see a whole class of young widows training to reload a gun, and Yelena wins the contest as she reloads it the most quickest. She walks away, and then we see the others presumably get their hands whipped. And just throughout the story, there was much emphasis on Yelena's sense of loneliness, her loss of family. Of course, that includes Natasha, the fact that she hadn't spoken to Red Guardian for over a year, that she was lacking direction and purpose, which drew parallels with the angst within Bob. And all of these moments allowed for far more emotional range for Florence Pugh to inhibit within the character, and Florence Pugh was very good and overall the best performance within the story. And these scenes did provide more dramatic weight. You do wonder again whether they might have been a result of some reshoots here to add more seriousness to the overall film perhaps, but I think in terms of the character it overall worked. And yes, I would be more than happy to see a continued involvement of Florence Pugh as Yelena further on within the MCU. Maybe we can get a team up again with Kate Bishop, perhaps in the potential second season of Hawkeye. So we'll then move on to the movie's ending, which sees the Thunderbolts bring a stop to the overall influence of the Void by connecting with Bob in a very forced group hug, a sign of the film trying to strive for that more sense of family and togetherness and emotional connection. They essentially calm Bob enough to eliminate the voiding effect, which resurrects everybody who was overall consumed by it. We then see them confront Valentina in the streets with the intent of at very least exposing her activities to the world, but she then conveniently walks them out to a press media conference who were just conveniently waiting there out in the open, which didn't make no sense, especially when Valentina is still facing impeachment. But they walk out there and Valentina announces them as the new Avengers, saving the world. And then Yelena realizes that with them knowing the truth about Valentina's operations, that they can use this to their advantage. And she whispers to Valentina that now they are in control of her. So essentially they can now live the life as the world's heroes, and Yelena will not go against them because she knows that they can expose her at any time. We then see the credit sequences with headlines announcing the Thunderbolts as the new Avengers. We see various media reactions to their overall involvements. And again, we all know this will be something very short term, because with the upcoming Avengers, we will then eventually see the OG team returning to the Void. We then, of course, had two end credit scenes. The first one being the more typical comedic one, where we see Red Guardian all cleaned up and shaven, walking into a supermarket, trying to tap into his more celebrity status, when he sees a woman buying a cereal box with the Thunderbolts on it. He tries to walk up to her, but she doesn't recognise him at all, and she ends up just creeping him out, and she doesn't buy the cereal box and just walks away. So that was a very funny moment. We then go on to this second end credit scene, which was far more hype, as we see an extended scene as the Thunderbolts now living it up in the Avengers Tower, clearly established as the new Avengers, perhaps with a Z on the end instead of an S. We see Red Guardian walking out in a new outfit that he wants to try on for the rest of the team, but they easily reject it. We see Sentry, who is kind of further nerfed as he can't really control his powers or command them, as he's still getting to grips with his feelings and emotions. Again, I don't know how they're going to handle that going into Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars. Once more, this highlights the problem of having such a superpowered being amongst all of the more street level characters. But then we get to the moment that was very exciting, where we see Yelena monitoring huge activity within space, and then we see the comet bearing down on planet Earth, but then we get a further close up and it's the ship of the Fantastic Four coming down, very much confirming what everybody speculated, that the Fantastic Four First Steps movie will see the heroes likely lose the battle against Galactus, who will consume the planet within their own reality, and then the Fantastic Four would escape or be transported into the current MCU timeline, where they will team up with the other heroes in the upcoming Avengers Doomsday story. So that makes complete sense, and again, it was a reminder of how the end credit scenes used to be very good in hyping us up for what was coming out in the near future. So that's it then in terms of my spoiler discussion within the Thunderbolts. Let me know in the comments if you feel there's any special elements that you think that I missed, and then we can have further debate. And of course, if you have any further suggestions regarding any other movies, television series, or any other topics within the pop entertainment and culture scene that you'd like to see me cover within this channel, also let me know in the comments, and I will see if I can provide further commentary for you on that subject matter within the future. Please also hit like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you very, very soon.